All right, we're up to day 16 now, and I did a little bit more skipping today than I usually did. I probably did around 800 to 900 skips in total. And I kind of treated this workout as a bit of a superset. So I did 2 to 3 sets of 100 skips to warm up, and then I just sort of dove straight into mixing the skipping with the lower body exercises that I did today. As usual, I wanted to mix up the work, so I was doing a little bit of multi-planar work. So I did some lateral and curtsy lunges, superset with one another, or in series with one another, I guess is the correct term. And the reason I wanted to do these is just so I can load that frontal plane, something that I've been missing quite a lot in my training. And I can't lie to you guys, these were actually really quite challenging, not necessarily weight-wise. Well, obviously it would have been easier if I did it without any weight, but just range of motion wise, it really is tricky, especially on that curtsy lunge, to get all the way down and to step far enough out. It just does seem kind of like a very awkward movement, but it does feel good because you get a nice stretch on the glutes, particularly across the IT band. Then I moved into the hip flexor raises, curls. I don't even know, is it a curl or a flexion? I guess it's just a flexion. Banded hip flexor raises. And I used 2 sticks to balance for these because I found it really, really difficult and I wasn't getting enough stretch on the hip flexor to replicate that sprinting motion when the leg is fully extended behind the body and then the hip flexor kind of pulls the leg all the way through. It does make sense to be standing upright so that you can get a lot more extension on that back leg, or well, passive extension on that back leg as the band pulls it through. You can get a bit more full range of motion through that hip flexor when you do it like that. So yeah, I did that, and then I supersetted that with some tibialis raises, and that was kind of like the giant slash tricep of what I was doing today. So skips, lateral and curtsy lunges, hip flexor raises, and tibialis raises. That was pretty much the gist of the entire workout. And I finished up, as you'll see at the end, with some bent leg calf raises to isolate that soleus muscle. So looking ahead to the next 10 or so weeks of training, I'm going to be doing a bit more jump and sprint training, mainly focused on building elasticity and plyometric capacity of my lower body, because I think that's an area of my athleticism that I really don't have and I haven't developed. I feel like I've been relying a little bit too much on doing strength training and weights when I haven't developed the qualities that a lot of the best athletes do. If you look at a lot of the best jumpers and sprinters, especially in track and field, they're very bouncy, they're very athletic, they have very efficient tendons, and they have very efficient movement patterns when it comes to these athletic movements of sprinting and jumping. It almost looks like they're flying, they're kind of springing off the floor. And that elasticity, obviously there are genetic components to that. You can't necessarily change the length of your tendons, that's a genetic thing. But you can definitely develop your body's capacity for elasticity. That's a rhyme right there. So a good way to think about it is with the equation for power. Power is force divided by time. So one method of increasing power is to just increase the amount of force you can put into the ground. So increasing the numbers on your squat or your deadlift, for example, and therefore, if you can lift more weight, then you can put more force into the ground with your legs. That is one way of doing it. And for people who already have a good athletic base, they already have fantastic technique and a lot of these sort of general sprinting, jumping, bounding mechanics. They've got a long history of doing that when they're a kid. They played a lot of sports. Then getting stronger for them is going to be very, very productive, and it's going to help them because they're already quite fast, they're already quite elastic, and they're already efficient at doing those movements. On the other end of the equation, someone who is potentially quite strong, they can put a lot of force into the ground, but they can't do it very quickly. Getting a lot stronger isn't going to help them to produce much more force. It's not an efficient way to help them produce more force. The best way to do that for them is to train them to produce that force more quickly. For example, by doing unloaded explosive movements. For example, sprinting, jumping, or even very, very lightly loaded explosive movements. Lightly loaded jumps, very, very lightly loaded power cleans, power snatches, so on and so forth. So that is how I'm going to be approaching my training over the next 10 weeks. Hope you enjoyed the video for today, and I will catch you in the next one.